Welcome, everyone, to the Deep Dive, ready to explore another fascinating topic.
Always excited to dive in.
Today, we're tackling something absolutely crucial for any organization that wants to stay ahead of the curve: needs analysis. We're going to unpack how to pinpoint the skills your employees need. The skills that'll really help your company reach those big, ambitious goals.
It's more common than you'd think for companies to miss the mark on this.
Really?
Oh, yeah. We've seen businesses pour resources into training programs that end up teaching skills that are, well, let's just say not exactly aligned with their actual needs.
Wow, I hadn't thought about it like that before. So it's
Yeah,
like giving everyone a toolbox full of hammers when what they really need are screwdrivers and wrenches.
exactly. And those mismatched tools, they can have some serious consequences.
Hmm.
Wasted resources, frustration for employees who aren't getting the training that would actually benefit them.
And ultimately, missed opportunities for the company's growth. Okay, so our guide for this deep dive is Chapter 3, Needs Analysis, straight from a training and development textbook. Let's break down how to avoid those pitfalls you mentioned. The chapter outlines a three-pronged approach.
It does. And all starts with what's called an organizational analysis.
Organizational analysis, okay.
This first stage is all about taking a step back, looking at the big picture.
I like it. Big picture thinking.
What's the company's mission, their long-term goals, and maybe most importantly, what's standing in the way of achieving those goals?
So it's not just about ticking off skills on a checklist.
No, not at all. It's about understanding the context,
Yeah,
where those skills fit into the bigger picture of the organization.
makes sense.
For example, if a company's trying to expand into a new international market, but their employees don't have strong cross-cultural communication skills, well, that's a problem.
Yeah, a pretty big one, I imagine.
A significant challenge that needs to be addressed for sure. And training can play a huge role there.
Got it. So once we've zoomed out and got that big picture view through the organizational analysis, what's next?
Next, we dive into the details of each job role. We call this task analysis. It's like dissecting each role to understand what it takes to be successful.
We're getting granular.
We are. We're not just looking at job titles, we're breaking them down into core tasks and figuring out the specific skills needed to do those tasks really well.
Okay, so let's say we're looking at a customer service representative.
Perfect example. They might need strong communication skills, obviously, problem-solving abilities, a deep understanding of the company's products or services.
Right, it's all connected. So we've analyzed the organization and we've broken down the tasks. What's the final piece of this needs analysis puzzle?
The final piece focuses on the individuals themselves, individual analysis.
Makes sense.
This is where we assess the current skills and knowledge of each employee, figure out who's already got what they need, and who might need some extra support.
So we're trying to get a sense of where each employee is at, skills-wise.
Exactly. And this is where things can get a little, tricky. How do you ensure objectivity in those assessments? How do you identify those subtle skills gaps that might not be so obvious at first glance?
Yeah, those are good points. I'm sure the chapter offers some guidance on that.
It does. It does. There are a variety of methods we can use, everything from performance reviews and self-assessments to more formal competency assessments.
And I imagine the choice of method depends on a few factors: the specific skills you're looking at, the resources available to the organization.
Absolutely. There's no magic formula that works for everyone. The key is to choose methods that give you reliable and objective data.
Data that aligns with the company's goals for the needs analysis in the first place.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've laid out the three core components of a needs analysis: organizational analysis, task analysis, and individual analysis. But before we go any further, let's talk about why this is also important. What are the real benefits here? Why should a company bother with all this?
Well, first of all, it helps you avoid those costly mismatches we talked about earlier. But beyond that, a well-executed needs analysis can unlock so many benefits for both the company and its people.
Okay, I'm listening. Tell me more.
Let's start with resource optimization. By identifying exactly where training is needed, companies can save time and money. Avoid wasting resources on programs that aren't really necessary.
So it's about making every training dollar count.
Exactly. It's about being strategic with your investments. And beyond the financial side of things, a good needs analysis can lead to some major improvements in employee performance.
Because when employees have the training they need to excel, they're more likely to.
Their productivity goes up, quality of work improves, they're more likely to reach their full potential.
And that probably translates into more engaged and satisfied employees too.
Absolutely. Employees who feel supported and valued, are going to be more motivated and committed to the company's success.
Makes sense. Okay, so we've established that needs analysis is important, but how do we actually go about gathering the information we need?
Well, there are a number of methods we can use, and often the best approach is to combine a few different techniques.
Right, like gathering evidence from different sources. Our chapter mentions surveys, interviews, and focus groups as common methods. Can you tell me a little more about those?
Sure, surveys can be a great way to gather a lot of data quickly. You can get a sense of employee perceptions, skill levels, training needs.
But you have to be careful with those.
You do. It's important to design surveys carefully because they rely on people's self-reporting. You want to make sure you're minimizing any potential for bias.
Okay, that makes sense. So what about interviews?
Interviews allow you to explore those individual perspectives in more depth.
You can dig a little deeper.
Exactly. They could be really helpful for uncovering those subtle skill gaps that might not show up in a survey.
And focus groups, what are the advantages there?
Focus groups are great for generating ideas, encouraging open discussion among employees.
Sort of brainstorming as a group.
Exactly. And that can help you identify common themes or concerns. Figure out training priorities within a specific team or department.
Okay, so we've got surveys, interviews, and focus groups. Any other methods we should consider?
Definitely. Observing employees in action is another valuable approach.
See how they're actually doing the work.
You got it. It can help you identify any discrepancies between what employees say they do and how they actually perform their tasks.
So it's a good reality check.
Exactly. We can also look at performance data, sales figures, customer satisfaction scores, error rates, those kinds of things.
Because those metrics can give you some objective evidence of where things might be going wrong.
Exactly. They can help pinpoint areas where training might be needed.
Right, it all starts to connect. And then depending on what specific skills we're trying to assess, we might even use competency assessments.
You're right. Competency assessments can give you a more standardized way to measure skills and knowledge.
Okay, so there's a whole toolkit of data collection methods at our disposal, but I'm really curious to see how all this works in a real-world situation. Our chapter includes a case study about a company called Global Tech.
Oh, Global Tech, yes.
Can you tell me a bit about them?
Global Tech is a multinational tech company. They're facing some big challenges as they try to expand into new global markets.
What kind of challenges?
Well, they're realizing their workforce might not be fully equipped to handle the complexities of operating in these new regions.
I can imagine. Going global is a big step.
It is. And they've identified a few key areas where they need to improve. Customer service quality, product development processes, cross-cultural communication.
All essential stuff when you're trying to establish a global presence.
Absolutely. And expanding into Asia and Europe specifically is presenting some unique challenges for them. They're discovering that different regions have different expectations, norms, ways of doing business.
So their training programs need to be tailored to those specific regional differences.
Exactly. They can't just take a cookie-cutter approach. And that's where needs analysis comes in. They need to understand what specific skill gaps are holding them back in these new markets.
And then develop training programs that address those gaps head on.
Exactly. Global Tech's case study is a great example of how a needs analysis can help companies navigate the complexities of global expansion and ultimately ensure their workforce is ready to thrive.
It's all about setting them up for success. Okay, so we've got the organizational context, we've talked about data collection methods, and we've got a real-world example to show us how these concepts work in practice. What's next on our agenda?
Well, I think it's time to dive into some best practices for conducting a truly effective needs analysis. Our chapter offers tons of guidance on how to make sure the process is thorough, objective, and really aligned with the company's overall strategic goals.
Sounds good to me. Ready to uncover those golden nuggets of wisdom?
Let's do it. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Ready to uncover some of those best practices for needs analysis?
Absolutely. Let's get into it. Our source material, this chapter, it really hammers home the importance of alignment, making sure the needs analysis is tied to the organization's goals from the get-go.
Yeah, that's crucial. I mean, imagine your company's top priority is, say, improving customer retention.
Okay, so they're laser focused on keeping those customers happy.
Right. In that case, your needs analysis should zero in on the skills that really impact those customer interactions. Maybe prioritize communication training for your frontline staff, or equip managers with strategies to handle customer feedback effectively.
So instead of just generic communication skills, we're talking about targeted training that addresses specific challenges.
Exactly. It's about making sure your training investments are really laser focused on those areas that are going to move the needle for the company.
I like that. Laser focused. Our
Mhm.
chapter also talks about involving key stakeholders throughout the process. Why is that so important?
Well, think about it. You could design the most amazing training program based on all the data you've gathered. But if you haven't talked to the managers who are going to oversee the training or the employees who are going to be participating,
You're missing a crucial piece of the puzzle.
right, you risk creating a program that doesn't actually meet their needs.
Or even worse, you end up facing resistance because people feel like they weren't part of the process.
Exactly. You want to create a sense of ownership, make sure everyone's on board. And involving those stakeholders early on can help you uncover valuable insights you might have missed otherwise. Think about it. Frontline managers, they usually have a pretty good understanding of the day-to-day challenges their teams are facing.
You're in the trenches.
Exactly. And we talked earlier about the importance of gathering data from multiple sources. Our source material, it really stresses that. Using a combination of surveys, interviews, observations, even looking at performance data.
Right, like a detective gathering evidence from different sources.
Exactly. The more perspectives you get, the more data points you have, the better your analysis will be. And each method, it has its strengths and weaknesses. Surveys can give you a broad overview, but interviews allow you to go deeper.
More of a nuanced understanding.
Exactly. Observations can show you how people actually perform their tasks, not just what they say they do.
Reality check.
Exactly. And performance data, that can help you quantify the impact of those skill gaps.
Yeah.
See how it's affecting the bottom line.
So you're piecing together the whole picture.
Right. Okay, so let's say we've gathered all this data. What's next? How do we make sense of it all?
That's where the analysis comes in.
Exactly. And this is where those critical thinking skills are really important. The goal is to go beyond just describing what the data tells us. It's about uncovering patterns, identifying those root causes,
Yeah.
drawing meaningful conclusions that can inform your training strategy.
Our chapter suggests using things like charts and graphs, visualizations to help make sense of the data.
Visualizations are great, yeah. They can make that complex information more digestible and help you spot trends or outliers that you might miss just staring at a spreadsheet.
So we've analyzed the data, we've identified the gaps. Now what?
Time to put those insights into action. We need to develop a solid training plan.
Okay, so outlining specific training activities, setting timelines, figuring out resources.
Right, all of that. And don't forget about measurable outcomes. How will you know if the training has actually been successful? What metrics are you going to use to track progress?
It's about making sure you can show that the training is having a real impact. Now, our chapter also emphasizes the importance of inclusivity and accessibility throughout this whole process. What does that look like in practice?
Good question. It means making sure that everyone in the organization, no matter their background or their role, has equal access to the training and development opportunities they need.
Right, so thinking about different learning styles, different abilities, making sure the training is inclusive and accessible for everyone.
Exactly. That might mean offering training in different formats. Maybe providing accommodations for employees with disabilities, being mindful of those cultural differences we talked about earlier.
One size definitely doesn't fit all.
Nope, not at all. Everyone learns differently. And a good needs analysis takes those differences into account.
Okay, let's bring back our friends at Global Tech and see how all these best practices could play out in their situation. Last we heard, they were grappling with some skill gaps related to customer service, product development, and cross-cultural communication.
Right, as they expand into those new markets in Asia and Europe.
Let's imagine we've been brought in as consultants to help them with their needs analysis. Where do we start?
Well, first and foremost, we need to make sure everything we do is aligned with their strategic goals. Global Tech, they want to be a leader in tech solutions, so their training has to support that ambition.
Makes sense. How do we translate that big picture goal into concrete training objectives?
Good question. Let's take customer service as an example. They might set a target to increase customer satisfaction scores by a certain percentage in their Asian and European markets.
Okay, so a measurable goal.
Exactly. To achieve that, maybe they need to train their customer service teams on how to handle those culturally specific interactions. Or maybe they need to equip them with language skills that are relevant to their customer base in those regions.
So it's about tailoring the training to the unique needs of each market.
Exactly. And that same principle, it applies to product development too. Their European market might demand a really high level of technical sophistication, while their Asian market might prioritize user friendliness and affordability. Understanding those nuances is going to inform how they design their training.
So the needs analysis helps them create products that really resonate with those specific customers.
You got it. And we can't forget about cross-cultural communication. Global tech might set some objectives around improving teamwork and collaboration between teams in different regions.
I can see how that would be important.
Definitely. They could even use the needs analysis to try to anticipate any potential cultural misunderstandings and then incorporate those scenarios into their training program.
Proactive problem solving.
Exactly. Okay, now let's think about those stakeholders. Who are the key players we'd want to engage with at Global Tech?
Well, the managers and team leaders from each region would be a good starting point.
For sure. They've got that firsthand knowledge of the challenges their teams are facing.
They know what's going on in the trenches. Who else?
Well, the employees themselves, obviously. They're the ones doing the work. Their input is super valuable.
They can give you that ground-level perspective.
Exactly. And let's not forget about subject matter experts, especially in a tech company like Global Tech. Those experts can help ensure the training content is accurate and up to date.
So we've assembled our team of stakeholders. Now let's talk data collection. What would be a good approach for Global Tech?
Given their global reach, I'd say surveys would be a good way to gather data from a lot of employees across different regions.
Efficient and cost-effective.
Exactly. They could design the surveys to capture how employees perceive their own skill levels, what kind of training they think they need, maybe even get some feedback on existing training programs.
Good starting point. What about interviews?
Interviews would be really helpful for exploring those cross-cultural communication challenges we talked about.
Get a deeper understanding.
Yeah, exactly. They could interview key personnel in each region, really try to understand the cultural factors that might be affecting performance.
So interviews help us get at those more nuanced qualitative aspects.
Exactly. And observations would be essential too, especially for understanding how employees are actually performing their tasks. Things like customer service interactions, product development processes. They could even use video recordings or simulations.
Get a glimpse into those real-world scenarios.
Exactly. And we shouldn't forget about all that performance data Global Tech probably has. Customer satisfaction scores, sales figures, product development timelines.
They're probably swimming in data.
They probably are. And analyzing that data can help pinpoint where performance might be lacking. Maybe they find that customer satisfaction scores are lower in regions where customer service teams haven't received specific language or cultural training.
The data tells a story.
It does. Okay, we've got a good plan for data collection, but how do we make sure we're getting the most valuable insights out of all that information?
That's the million-dollar question.
It is. It's about going beyond just describing what the data says. It's about interpretation, critical thinking.
Okay, help me understand that.
Sure. Let's say the surveys show that a lot of employees in their European market feel like they need more training on a particular technical skill. We don't stop there.
We dig deeper.
Exactly. We ask, why do they feel that way? Is it because the training they received wasn't adequate? Or are there other factors at play, like outdated technology or unclear expectations?
So it's about getting to the root of the issue.
Right. Once you understand the root causes of those skill gaps, you can start developing effective solutions. Maybe it's not just about training. Maybe it's about updating their technology or clarifying job roles.
It's all connected.
It is. And remember, analysis isn't a one-time thing. It's a process. We might start with some initial ideas based on the data, but we need to be open to changing those ideas as we learn more.
So flexibility is key.
Absolutely. And it's important to document everything as you go. Your findings, your hypotheses, your evolving understanding of Global Tech's needs.
Create a roadmap.
Exactly. Good documentation is important for so many reasons. It helps you track your progress, ensure consistency, and communicate your findings clearly.
And it ultimately serves as a guide for developing and implementing those training programs.
Right. A well-documented needs analysis is a powerful tool. It can guide Global Tech's training strategy for years to come.
I'm excited to get to that part, actually designing the training.
Me too. But we'll save that for next time.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground in the last two parts.
We have. We talked about defining needs analysis, explored some best practices, even look at that real-world case study with Global Tech.
It's all been building up to this, designing the training programs.
The fun part. We've laid the groundwork right. We understand Global Tech's goals, those skill gaps they're facing. Now we can dive into all those training methodologies.
I'm ready. Let's get creative.
Okay, so Global Tech, they're a tech company. Global workforce. My guess is they'll need a mix of different approaches to meet everyone's needs.
One size fits all probably won't cut it.
Definitely not. Especially in a global context. You've got different cultures, different learning styles, different time zones. Let's start with a classic approach that's still really effective. Instructor-led training, or ILT for short.
The traditional classroom setting.
Yeah, exactly. A good facilitator, lots of interaction, hands-on practice.
I can see the benefits there.
ILT is great for developing those soft skills. Communication, teamwork, leadership. Those are all crucial for global tech, especially as they're trying to build relationships across different regions.
It makes sense, but it also seems like it could be challenging. Logistically, I mean.
Yeah, you're right. ILT can be tough to coordinate, especially for a global workforce.
And expensive, potentially.
That too. But that's where technology can help.
Okay, so let's talk about online learning. E-learning.
Ah, yes. E-learning. The flexibility is a huge advantage. Employees can access training whenever it's convenient, wherever they are.
Learn at their own pace.
Exactly. And it's a cost-effective way to reach a large, dispersed group of people.
So global tech could create online modules for all sorts of topics.
Yeah.
Technical skills, cross-cultural communication, the possibilities are endless.
They are. And they could even add interactive elements to make the training more engaging. Quizzes, simulations, maybe even some gamification.
I like it. Now, I'm curious about those more cutting-edge technologies. Virtual reality, augmented reality. Do those have a place in a company like Global Tech's training strategy?
Absolutely. VR and AR, they're not just futuristic concepts anymore. They're becoming more expensive, more affordable. They can really change the way we train people.
Give me an example.
Okay, imagine Global Tech's customer service teams using VR simulations to practice handling those tricky customer interactions.
Oh, I see. It's like a flight simulator for customer service.
Exactly. They can experience different scenarios, experiment with different approaches, all in a safe environment. No real-world consequences if they make a mistake.
That's really cool. What about AR?
AR could be huge for their product development teams.
Yeah.
Think about engineers using AR headsets to get real-time guidance as they're assembling something complex, or troubleshooting a technical issue.
So it's like having an expert looking over your shoulder.
Exactly. It can accelerate that learning process. And we can't forget about mobile learning.
Oh yeah, mobile learning. Everyone's on their phones or tablets all the time.
Exactly. Why not use those devices for learning? Global Tech could create mobile-friendly apps. Employees could access training content during their commute, on their lunch break, whenever they have a few minutes.
It's about making learning fit into the flow of people's lives.
Exactly. And it's a great way to do what's called micro-learning.
Micro-learning, okay.
That's about breaking down the training content into those bite-sized chunks.
Easier to digest.
Right. Instead of bombarding employees with hours of content, you give them those short bursts of information that are easier to process and remember.
I like that approach a lot. Okay, so we've looked at a ton of different options. ILT, e-learning, VR, AR, mobile learning. How does a company like Global Tech choose the right mix for them? It seems overwhelming.
It can be. The key is to go back to your needs analysis. What are the skill gaps? What are the learning preferences of your employees? What's your budget?
So it's not about just picking the most high-tech solution.
No, not at all. It's about choosing the approaches that make the most sense for your specific needs.
And you can mix and match, right?
Of course. You can have online modules, some ILT workshops, maybe some on-the-job coaching, even some VR simulations. The goal is to create a learning experience that's engaging and effective.
And don't forget about evaluation. We need to know if the training is actually working.
So important. Evaluation often gets overlooked, but it's crucial for making sure your training investments are paying off.
So Global Tech needs to set up a system to track those customer satisfaction scores. See if they improve after the training.
Exactly. And don't just rely on those numbers. Qualitative feedback is important too.
Talk to the employees. Get their perspectives on the training.
Exactly. Ask them, what did you learn? How are you applying those new skills? Managers can observe their teams, provide feedback.
So it's about gathering data from multiple sources and using that data to make the training even better.
You got it. Well, this deep dive has been a journey. We've covered a lot of ground.
We have, from defining needs analysis to designing those training programs, it's all connected.
It is. Any final words of wisdom for our listeners who are ready to embark on their own training adventures?
Don't be afraid to experiment.
Yes. And make it an ongoing process. Regularly assess those training needs. Get feedback from your people. Adjust your programs as needed.
Be flexible, be adaptable. And remember that the ultimate goal is to help your employees grow. Give them the skills they need to thrive.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Until next time, keep those brains buzzing.